The Eels have again entered into what looks to be a very clumsy contract negotiation with their skipper, Clint Gutherson. James Hooper reported that Gutherson's manager had stormed out on a meeting accusing the club of embarrassing themselves for offering $750,000. They said that that's not even close to where they need to be. Now, I don't know why these talks, especially with their skipper, tend to be a little bit untidy and a little bit protracted, because it just leaves Clint in the middle of everything.
Yeah, he spoke today. I was on the Zoom call with him today. Clint Gutherson, he sort of did his best to flat bat the talk about his contract negotiations and what he's worth. And look, they're a big club. That's what gets in the news. It's a big club.
And he's the captain of the big club. He's the captain.
He's a big player. They're struggling. And we spoke about it last week. And we spoke about the fact that last time they had these negotiations, it was ugly and messy, and it's going down that path again.
Is it true? Is the $1 million mark true?
I've had his manager say that they've put no figure to Parramatta, but the figure has come out, Fonnie. What I'll say is Sam Ayub, who's Clint Gutherson's manager, has categorically denied that he's the one that's put the $1 million figure out. As we spoke about last night, it's just out there in the public. He's walked out on $750 today, which was Parramatta's starting point. This is how it began last time, that Parramatta tried to lowball Gutherson. They then tried to support their argument by putting out questions about the welfare of his knees and various other issues, and it never really healed, as we're now seeing.
If 750 is embarrassing, what's not embarrassing then? 900? Like, where do you get to where it's not embarrassing? It must be nudging $1 million.
Well,
if you consider 750 embarrassing.
Why would the club do this to their captain?
I'd be filthy if I'm in his shoes. Both sides of it. I understand that they're a big club and under a lot of pressure at the moment, but good clubs don't operate like this with your captain and your star player, because it should be done at this level. It should be done privately and confidential, and we should be guessing what's going on as opposed to knowing everything that's happening. So for me, it's just not run well at all.
But Kurtz, when you were negotiating with Melbourne, did you sit down with a committee?
No.
See, that to me, that's where it starts for Parramatta. They have a 5-man committee in charge of recruitment and retention, and they've all got input. There's too many voices in the room.
It needs to be streamlined. It needs to be kept in behind closed doors. We don't need to be thrashing this out in the media every single day. Gutho was asked about his chances of being the next $1 million man today.
I'd love to get that. Obviously, it's I have no clue where that came from. Look, it's always going to start, as you said. People always talk about it. Look, that's up to Sam, clubs, whatever it is. But as I said, I'm just going to leave that to Sam, and he can go about that business. To be honest, I haven't even thought of it. I don't know where all this has popped out of nowhere, and I haven't even spoke to Sam, and that's his job at this time of year, and whenever it comes around. But look, I'm just going to leave that up to him, and that's why we pay him. And whenever he needs me, he'll call me, but I haven't spoke to him yet.
Yeah, Clint Gutherson doing his best there to just try and smooth it over. But if we're being fair to him, they're 4 weeks out from finals. There's serious questions over their form heading into this September campaign. Now their captain's out there trying to defend himself and his worth. It's a terrible look.
Yeah, if you want to win a competition, a lot of things have to go right. And this isn't the way you go about it. Having conjecture around your captain, your best player, and then obviously your team on the slide, potentially going to be in 6th spot by the end of this season. So for me, it's just not well handled on all fronts.
Let's not forget there's conjecture around the coach as well. So it's not just the captain. There's conjecture around the future of the coach a month out from the finals. I mean,
I think Clint Gutherson, this is where too many people in this game have it wrong. Clint Gutherson employs Sam Ayub. He pays Sam Ayub to do his negotiations. For him to sit there and say, I don't even know where it's at, I don't know what Sam's done, don't know what he's asked for, he should have a value in his head as the player, what he thinks he's worth and what he wants to get, and say to his manager, mate, if we get to this figure, I'm happy.
Deal done.
Deal done. But it's all backwards. It's the manager telling him. I get Sam Ayub has been around a long, long time. He's one of the better managers. Okay, in a pool of sharks, he's one guy I'd be comfortable with having represent me if I needed one. But by the same token, I think players have got to understand that they've actually got the whip hand. And for Clint Gutherson to be part of all this circus that's going on around Parramatta at the moment, when he's captain of the club, and when all he has to do is put down his number down to the club, get his manager to sort out the nuts and bolts of it, and it's done. Now, if they don't get there and they've got to come together, that's when your manager comes in and does his job. But to sit there and say, I've got no idea what he's asked for, what the figure is, meanwhile all this is circling around, it's all backwards. He employs the manager.
Why would they be doing this? Why would you do this a month before the finals too? Well, put it off for 8 weeks or 6 weeks. Get your season out the way. Just come out tomorrow. They should come out tomorrow and say, we're parking it. We'll deal with it at the end of the year, because you've still got, at the end of the season, even if they make the grand final, you've still got a month to nut it out.
Can you imagine what grand final work's going to be like if he hasn't signed?
Well, that's true.
Like, seriously though, if he has not signed...
But it doesn't matter. If you're a club that operates in a certain way, private and confidentially, out of respect, it does not matter when he does it now, 6 weeks, or even grand final week. It's the fact that there's just way too much information coming out at one time.
Which, Coops, is why it comes back to what we spoke about last night, about this disjointed... committee for recruitment and retention at Parramatta that's just not working. There's too many voices in the room, and for all the happiness to have robust conversations, there's no point having robust conversations if you can't get enough consensus, and that's when you become an issue, and it's now manifesting itself out in the captain of the club.
Well, Cooper, what does $1 million buy you in the NRL these days?
Well, a lot of players are on $1 million, but for me, there must be a fine print in $1 million contract about almost what guaranteed return for success. I think a lot of money gets thrown around a lot of players and you get paid what you're worth, but for me, you need to be able to repay that faith, competitions, trophies. But the other thing too is you need to set the agenda for what comes after. You need to leave a legacy for players to achieve and for clubs to go on. So, yeah, there's a lot of players on $1 million, but only a few really get to that level.
And there's not many... There's not multiple $1 million players at clubs. Generally, clubs have got one in them. If they're careful with how they spend it, they might get close to two.
Manly's probably the exception, right? They've got a couple at the moment, Cherry and Tommy, but you're right, not many do. Melbourne used to back in the day.
Melbourne used to back when all the high flyers were playing. But you've got to, when you do that, you've got to be selective. And to Cooper's point, you've got to get it in the right guy. It's got to be a match winner. It's got to be a guy who's going to elevate your team.
Because it impacts on who you can put around that person.
Well, you can't put all around who you want then, Vonnie. Like, once you spent $1 million on one bloke, that's 10% of your... That's more than 10% of your salary.
Spend $1 million and have a question mark next to that person. It's $1 million and this guy's taking us all the way.
Your column today, you said that most of the experts at the beginning of this year had Parramatta in the top 4. Do you think the paranoia...
Outside the top 4.
Oh, outside the top 4. Do you think the paranoia is now growing within Parramatta?
Well, this is my whole issue about everybody now coming out and saying, well, mate, Brad Arthur's not the man to deliver him. Now, the only ex-player who I found who had Parramatta in their top 4 was Andrew Johns, who had him 3rd, who coaches there.
Yeah.
Okay? Everybody else...
You understand that. But Joey's going to back his...
Of course I understand.
Yeah.
Of course, I totally get it. But my point is this. If nobody had him in the top 4, and they're now 4th, admittedly not travelling well, but they're now 4th after 21 rounds. If they're now 4th, why is the coach not doing his job? What's happened?
I think the biggest question mark over the Eels wasn't their ability to play football in the regular season. It's come finals time, what can you do? They won from 6 under Brad Arthur, gone out the straight sets last year. So for me, they have been one of the most consistent, almost fearful teams in the regular season. When they get to the big bright lights, they seem to drop off. So for me, it should have been an approach about changing the season around a bit, as opposed to peaking in the early parts of the year. Maybe change your program to start hitting the straps, i.e. South Sydney right about now.
Yeah, see, I take that on board, what you say there, but that's where I wonder where Parramatta, they don't have that Tom Trbojevic, Latrell Mitchell, James Tedesco, they don't have that type of player, that guy who's just got to blow a game apart.
The
guy who takes a half chance and turns it into a certain... Yeah, but that's their problem.
You need stars, though. You need stars.
You need game breakers. You need a guy that's going to take a half chance and turn it into a definite 6 point. David Fafita, get 10 yards out from the line, throw in the ball, watch him score.
They don't have another gear either. It feels like they're at this high level and they've been there most of the year. They've dipped a little bit now, but I don't think they can go up another notch from where that consistent level they were at. Whilst you look at
but
teams
the star
like...
player what takes
probably
them.
does that, exactly, yeah. If they had... Mitchell Moses is probably that guy. He's got to be that guy. And that's the question mark over Mitch, whether he can elevate his game to that level. I mean, he's paid good money now on that new contract.
Yeah.
That he's got to be the guy that does that.
It felt like at one point, and you spoke to Mitch Moses and Clint Gutherson on Super Saturday, you said it was that performance, I can't remember how long ago, but you said that's the gold standard. That's where you should aim to do each and every week with your attack. And then they were able to do that for a little bit, but it just kind of fell flat again.
Yeah, I think that was about 10 weeks ago, and you could say that for the last 2 or 3 seasons. That's exactly what Parramatta have done recently. They get through the halfway mark and they look like well-bees. They thought this is going to be the difference. And, you know, to Reedy's point and Kenny's point about a star player, I think they need a little bit of flexibility in their game style. If you shut down the forward momentum of Parramatta, you basically shut down Gutherson and Eels. I think they need plan A, B and C. Look at the good teams. If you shut down something, they've got the ability to go in a different direction and the star player can play a part.